when you're looking at the themes of inclusive growth, sustainable growth, okay, I have a certain framework, okay, for you to study this. So if you're looking at inclusive and sustainable growth, well, the first thing is that you should know how to define them. Definition. Okay, so definition, when you look at inclusive growth, they will always say employment opportunities for majority of the population. Then some people will say, I thought inclusive growth is equity. I thought it's about fairness. Yes, but they are looking at this from a macro perspective. So inclusive growth, they will usually say growth that benefits a large proportion. For example, creating employment for a majority of people. Okay. Sustainable growth, refer to REF. Okay. So sustainable growth usually is about making sure resources are not depleted. It's about making sure environmental damage is reduced, and hence protecting the welfare of future generations. Okay. Familiarity with definition is a must. Now, indicators. Some schools have a lot of info, some schools have less on this. But can anyone tell me how to measure inclusive growth? Gini coefficient, very good. Very good. Wei, Mitila and Kuan and Vinay and Rishi and everyone, okay? Very good. Gini coefficient. Okay? Sustainable growth, we use something called the green GDP indicator. Okay, so this was first mooted by China. Green GDP is basically GDP, but you minus your cost of resources, environmental damage. Okay, I think in the Hua Chong notes, they were more detailed. They say net natural capital consumption, NNCC, but there's no common baseline like, wow, you have to go to such level of detail. So you can just follow your notes here. Okay, definition, indicators. Of course, when you look at sustainable growth, inclusive growth, it's an outcome. It's like inflation. It's like unemployment. It's not a policy, right? So because it's an outcome, you need to know how to achieve them. So I'm going to teach you a framework, or I'll recap this framework that allows you to understand how to achieve them and sometimes why they are not realized. Okay. So how to achieve, my framework here is EG plus, EG minus, EG prime. Okay. So what is EG plus, EG minus, and EG prime? Let me show you. Okay. EG, when I say EG, I'm talking about your usual actual growth and sustainable growth. So this is economic growth. Sorry, actual growth and sustained growth, not sustainable. I will just call it and potential. Actual and potential growth, let me just call it EG in short. Okay. So when you're looking at how to achieve inclusive and sustainable growth, the first point actually means that when you have economic growth, in the sense where you have higher real GDP, you can benefit inclusive growth. Is this making sense? So I'm saying the moment you achieve your traditional sustained growth, I don't want to put SG because SG here represents sustainable, but the moment you try to get actual growth and potential growth, when your real GDP goes up, you can already improve inclusive and sustainable growth. Why? Because higher real GDP creates employment opportunities. And furthermore, remember we have a multiplier impact. Multiplier effect means, okay, other downstream industries, they benefit too. It doesn't mean if the government spends $9 million on building a road, only the construction industry benefits. No. Why? Because there's going to be a rise in induced consumption, right? As part of your multiplier process. And you will have people spending on food and other things, so F&B industry can benefit too. And F&B usually hires low-skilled workers. Low-skilled. service industry, usually skill level is not so high. Okay, they benefit. So can you see how the spillover benefits? Although I'm not saying externalities here, I'm just saying you're creating employment for a majority of people, not just that certain industry. Understand this point? Okay. Okay. Next one. You can also improve sustainable growth, especially when you have potential growth, like better technology to maximize the use of your resources. Remember, potential growth is about higher quality, higher quantity. So if you can find a way to use less energy to produce things, it's almost like now you have more energy resources. Or you can just say, oh, we discover how to use renewable energy. So we open up new sources of energy. So this also reduces the risk of depletion of energy, of resources. So it helps to achieve this REF thing. That's why questions on sustainable and inclusive growth, you don't have to be too worried, because there is still some AD and AS analysis in there. It's not totally uncharted waters. Can you follow? Well, next one, EG minus. Okay, EG minus is saying higher real GDP growth, okay, can worsen inclusive growth. It's like a double-edged sword. Because when you want to grow, your economy tends to move up the value chain. One reason why African states always say that, hey, we are not really developing so much, is because they are still very much caught in a straitjacket. They're still producing resources, raw materials. They've not moved out the value chain to electronics, to biotech, to higher skill levels. Okay? Redundancy of labor can occur. Low-skilled workers suffer. Okay? So this is how you can exacerbate your income disparity. It can also worsen sustainable growth, because when you have more production and you have more consumption, like cars, you will get more pollution and depletion of resources. Okay. So EG prime just means there are other measures to achieve inclusive growth. Aside from reliance on traditional growth, there are other ways to try to boost growth. How? Inclusive growth, we can have things like progressive tax. We can have welfare payments. We can have skills upgrading. Of course, education as well. Then for sustainable growth, you can have things like carbon taxation, right? You can invest in renewable energy. So this is my EG plus, EG minus, and EG prime framework to studying inclusive and sustainable growth.